So one thing you mentioned a minute ago, and this is important to this discussion, is the academic side of it, right? Because definitely the academic stuff has a place, but it can also become a kind of an idol, and it can become the replacement. Instead of knowing and trying to have a relationship with God, we can instead worship and have a relationship with this idea that we have, and that's not God. That's the idea of God. So, what is the accurate place for academics in this domain? You had a good discussion about St. Gregory Palamas, that he was chosen because he kind of had both qualities, right, of the logic and the philosophy as well as the theology. What is the right place of academia for us?
The one thing I would say is it's very hard to study theology without a very intense prayer life. If you can't be in the services, like I see, the ideal is to be a monastic in this regard, and that's just reality. But if you can't be a monastic, I remember Father Roman Braga, blessed memory, a saint. He was in Michigan. He came over from Romania, and Father Roman used to say, "I send anybody to Saint Tikhon's because they have a monastery." And he said, in Romania, we had the monastery and the seminary together.
Mm-hmm.
So we always went to services, we chanted, we did everything with the monks, and we studied at the same time. So even though, yes, we're married, that's a reality. We're not going to be monastics. The formation has to be one. And I heard this so many times, the priest must have the heart of a monk. Like he has to have that heart inside of him that he could very easily just leave the world and go be a man of prayer. That's where the heart has to be. So it has to be cultivated. And we could say the same thing. We're super blessed in America to have Jordanville, which I think is by far the best seminary. And what is it? Men get to go there and actually live as almost monastics. They live as basically uh, uh, not inquire. What's the word I'm looking for? But they're
Yeah, we've had. I know what you mean. That they get to live the cycle of the services, where the theology and the academic stuff isn't divorced from that cycle. Cycle of the life of
yeah,
the church, like you were talking about. Like Luke Kendrat, he went to Jordanville and he talked about that.
yeah. Because the thing is you're actively purifying. We see God not with our mind. This is the distinction between East and West, which is we don't see God with our mind. We see
Yeah.
God with the heart, with the purified nous, right? And so when you're in the services, you are actively purifying your nous. You are turning all of the attention of your heart to prayer, even if you're just standing in church doing the Jesus prayer the whole time, for an hour or two. It doesn't matter. You're still turning your being towards God. So then when you go to the books and you're reading, you know the God that you're reading about because it's the same God you spent 2 hours with earlier that day. You're in relationship with him. You're not just reading, like you said, about somebody that you've heard about. You're and if you're communing, I mean, you are ingesting him. You are actively receiving Christ into yourself as you're learning about him. So many times. I remember a good example, right? Which was, that the Holy Fathers, when they talk about the Trinity, this is a very hard concept for people to understand. It's not just that they said, "Oh, the Trinity is in Scripture." It's that they could see the Trinity noetically. They could see the Godhead noetically, mystically. I remember I was talking with a priest one time, and he said, "Father, when I was serving the liturgy, I felt like I was looking into heaven and
Mm-hmm.
I could see the Godhead." He wasn't saying literally with his eyes, he was saying noetically. He
Mm-hmm.
said, "I could see that there were three persons and they were one in essence." Now, what does that mean? Because we say these kind of, grand theological statements, but they're only like one sentence long. It's like, Elder Sophrony talked about like we read scripture and scripture only gives us an outline of what happened. It doesn't go into much detail. Like, for instance, Christ on Mount Tabor, he was transfigured and became all light. Well, what does that mean? You don't know it until you see it. We the theology is our finite language trying to capture that which is infinite. And so many times the Holy Fathers say, like when you start reading hesychastic fathers, they say these things about God. like that God consumed them. What does that mean? Like that's it. They just say God, I was consumed in prayer by the Lord, the living God or something. So excuse me. But yeah, I mean, you have to be in that purification process for the theology to be really sinking in. And it wasn't that St. Tikhon's had, a subpar education. It wasn't that. It was a whole life. It was a whole lifestyle. That's what it was. It was
Yeah.
holistic in a way that Western academics is very divorced. And it's just the classroom and none of the heart.
So I'm trying to think of an analogy. Like it'd be like reading all about medicine and knowing everything about medicine, but not
Yeah.
taking the medicine,
Yeah. But I mean,
which would be
I
silly.
love weightlifting, and it's like, how many guys are these weightlifting exercise physiologist guys, PhD, and you look at them and you're like, have you even lifted weights? And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
you have some guy who's huge, red face, high blood pressure, whatever else, has never been to school, like graduated high school maybe, and he can help people get strong as an ox. It's like, why? Because he has all experience, and the experience has imparted the knowledge. And maybe he's studied and read. I mean, the greatest powerlifting coach ever, Louis Simmons, he read all of these Russian texts, but I don't think he even had a college degree. I don't even know if he graduated high school, but he lived it, and then he studied at the same time that he was living it, and so he was able to hand it on. He created more work than anybody else. I mean, like, that's how the yeah. Anyways,
Yeah. What? So, you mentioned, that so academia has a place. It can be an idol. What is that proper place when it comes to, say, a lot of good academics that are Orthodox out there that I know that do live the faith. Dr. Bo Branson or like a Dr. David Bradshaw, and they're not priests. They're professors that bring their their theology into their life and into their classroom because they specialize in certain topics. So what's that right balance for the person who's not like a priest or a deacon even who's just a lay but they're an academic, so to speak?
well, I mean, I think that I would draw the distinction between the fact that they're, like, we would say they're like they're professionals. You know what I mean? And so I think the distinction becomes that there are people who are lay people who think that all their problems are academic, and they're not. Their problems are really interpersonal, and their real problems in their life are spiritual. They have real spiritual problems that they need to address. But they think if they read academic books, it's going to somehow help them, and it's not. Yeah, we
Well,
get like,
those are friends of ours and people that we know in our circles that are professors that live their Orthodox faith out. And I'm
mm,
just saying that they're not priests, they're not deacons, they're lay professors. But then there's other types of people who, for example, will have no academic training at all, but then present themselves as a kind of academic expert on Twitter. And there's also people that present themselves as spiritual fathers, the elders of Twitter, right? I know there's a joke profile that says that. I'm talking about people who actually think that they're sort of spiritual guides on Twitter or something like that. So it's like two different types of error. One presenting themselves as an academic and they're not. Another type that's an academic and openly subverts the faith, the sort of Fordham type people. And then the other people who present themselves as, oh, I don't care about academics. I'm spiritually advanced and let me show you how I pray publicly on Twitter. It's different flavors is what I'm getting at here.